and welcome to the Talk with Tariro, a program where we bring you diverse issues that pertain to our day-to-day lives as a country. On the program today, our discussion, we are looking at the prevention and response to sexual exploitation and abuse. This is one issue that we continue witnessing. If we go to our courts, almost every day there is a case related to sexual exploitation and abuse. And we do know that when it comes to child sexual exploitation and abuse, it has become a serious problem that affects all countries globally, and us as a country, we are not excluded. While there are various factors contributing to its prevalence in Zimbabwe, poverty, I repeat, is arguably one of the major underlying issues and root causes of most of these factors. And helping us to dissect this very important issue, we have Trevor Nyakujka, who is Sexual and Reproductive Health Rights Assistant. Trevor, welcome again to the Talk with Tariro.
So thank you for having me.
Yes. When we are looking at the issue of sexual exploitation and abuse, maybe let's start off with you actually unpacking this issue. When we talk about sexual exploitation and abuse, what exactly are we referring to?
That's a very interesting question. You know, I've been doing this a lot and no one has really ever figured out and stopped to ask me about that. But generally at the end of the day, what we need to understand, especially as something that happens in the social dynamics of the day-to-day lives that we live in, is that we break the words. There's sex, there's exploitation, and there's abuse. So the key thing that we need to appreciate is that, as you clearly talked about, there's an issue of poverty, and what then comes out of the issue of poverty is the difference in power dynamics that exists between individuals and in society. So when it comes then, is then when people are using now the differential powers that exist between I am either a school teacher, I am the headman, I am the nurse at the clinic, and the person who's coming. And in this context, as ARC, we're really focusing on children. And I'm the child who's coming, and I want you to teach me, I want you to give me the maze, I want you to help me and assist me. And people just merely say that, you know, you're beautiful. And those connotations then go on. In a normal dynamic where the power dynamics are equal, me calling a person beautiful when they're asking me for something is okay. But when the power dynamics begin to now change, that's where the problem is. And what we see is that there's been an increased amount of sexual exploitation that comes into the society because people see these things as normal. You want something, and a person asks you for a sexual favor. You want to pass in class, a person asks you to sleep with you. And those problems are what we define as sexual exploitation. For as long as you feel that someone is invading your personal space in any sexual form, whether using words or using actions or even actual sexual contact, that is sexual exploitation.
And before we just proceed with the discussion, let's just take a look at these statistics that an organization like Adult Rep Clinic has witnessed in our country. Just take a look. I do know it can shock some of us.
One thing that we barely really appreciate in the world is how apparent this happens. And we as ARC, we are operating right now 4 clinics. We have one clinic in Rare, one clinic in Gokwe, one clinic in Kadoma, and one clinic in Masvingo. And what I need you to appreciate is that the majority of cases, roughly between our clinics, it averages between 65 and 75% of the people that then come to our clinic are children. Children aged below 18, 17 years going down. And if you look at the cases, most of the instances are cases where, just as I've already alluded, the examples where a child is in a vulnerable point, they want services, or they're groomed into a way, whether be it by a person that they know or a family member, and they groom them. While the child is like, oh no, so this is my uncle, this is whoever, and I'm enjoying what is going on. And they're being groomed into something that they don't really know and understand. And this is why at the end of the day, we really need to appreciate that sexual exploitation, we may not see it because it's not as pervasive, it's not
Exactly, and that's the question that I wanted to then ask you to then say, we are looking at us dealing with children. At what point can a child then tell that this is actually exploitation, this is abuse? Because when someone is being groomed, they actually like sort of, in Shona we say kunyengetedzwa, until they see like it's almost like it's natural, it's normal.
Yeah. I think one thing that we really need to appreciate is a child knows that this is good, this is bad. Because in the process of grooming, it doesn't start with, oh, so let's go into the next room and let's sleep together. It starts with, can you keep a secret? If you keep a secret, I'll give you a sweet. If you don't tell your mom that I told you that you're beautiful, I will not tell you again. So it's a gradual process. But at the end of the day, it's one thing that as parents, as guardians, and as people who are custodians of children, we need to define what sexual exploitation is to children. Because if it's never defined, they'll get to a point where they're already in a place where they come back and they're pregnant to a old madala. And that's when it starts conscientizing, because that's when the family then comes. She's pregnant.
Yes. Yes.
And then we start then asking ourselves, what's really going on? And we don't want to get to a point where it's too late, but we need to catch it from the back by merely defining what it is to children. The very small, minute definitions are the things that children really need to know and understand.
Indeed, when it comes to child sexual exploitation and abuse, there are these minute things like what he's saying that do happen, that okay to a young person, and it's important for us to make sure that we make the child aware. And once a child is aware that I'm actually being exploited, I'm being abused here, they can go and seek for services. We are going to continue with our discussion after the break, really wanting to unpack now in terms of the different trends that we have witnessed. Join us after the break. Welcome back. Our discussion on sexual exploitation and abuse continues. And really today we are trying to zero in on child sexual exploitation and abuse. So Trevor, when we are looking at the trends that you have experienced as well as the different circumstances that as adult rape clinic, children have actually come to you to report, what have been these, and also looking at who really, I do know you mentioned it in our first segment, but who are the major perpetrators when you're looking at these different circumstances, trends that you have witnessed as an organization?
You know, as we work as ARC, we meet people from different backgrounds. We meet people from affluent backgrounds, we meet people from middle class backgrounds, and we meet people from low income backgrounds. And the reason why I'm talking about this is I need to emphasize that sexual exploitation can happen within any part of the tax bracket.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to think that a lot of sexual exploitation is taking place in the low income areas. And yet in high income areas, it is also taking place. Number one. Number two, I also need us to appreciate that as majority of the children that then come to ARC seeking services, most of these people are people that have been groomed. These are people that have been groomed by either a neighbor, a family member, a guardian, a person who has the custodianship of taking care of that person. And these are the majority of the cases, because these are people who manipulate the trust that the children entrust on them. So they use that trust and create circumstances where the child either feels compelled or feels that they need to do it because they're obligated to do it. Another issue that is really coming out is the fact that children, because they do not have, now get in a scenario where if they see or get in a situation where people can provide, and this is not provision of something as basic as paying your entire school fees. This is provision as something as simple as paying the combi to go to school, not the one to come back, just to go to school only. And these circumstances are the circumstances that we see on a day-to-day basis. And these are things that we as individuals living in Zimbabwe see, but I don't know whether I would like to call it we choose to close one eye and pretend like it's not happening. But at the end of the day, if we then look at the psychological impact that is taking place on these children,
Yes.
it is really a problem.
Yeah. And I would want us to zero in terms of how does it happen within the home with an uncle. Unpacking that helps us maybe for children. You know, you said sometimes it's not as clear. So what we would want is to enlighten particularly young people, even to enlighten guardians, parents, when one of our own might actually decide to exploit a child. Unpack those minute details that we are speaking to.
Before I answer your question, I would like to talk about something that we generally do as organizations that are fighting for children's rights. We have this small game, Yema Don't Touch.
Yes.
So we really talk, I think you've heard about
Yes.
my Don't Touch. So we go to children and we define which are the sexual organs that are on a body.
Yes.
The sexual organs include the breasts. Males do have breasts,
Yes.
boys. You need to appreciate this. We talk about the buttocks. We talk about the groin area. And these are areas that are very, very important to you, because you will never see you will see a person without their clothes, but they always make sure that they've covered these
Yes.
areas. The reason why they're covering these areas are because, most importantly, these are sacred areas that you need to protect on your own and can be used in the process of sexual exploitation.
Yes.
So in appreciating this, I need for every child that is watching this program to appreciate these important areas. If you see any person that wants to give you a sweet, that wants to give you money so that they get there, there's a problem. This is the most direct of sexual exploitation that can take place. And then there's the indirect, the minute things that then happen, like you're beautiful,
Yes.
you are sexy. And this is a person who's this is me telling this to my 9-year-old niece. And this is really uncalled for. And the thing is that you're beautiful starts as a compliment until it gets into a space where it's like, at the end of the day, why is this doing this? And the thing about
But there's also this aspect where maybe people would then say, I was just complimenting her so that she can be confident in herself. How do we separate the two?
the separation now comes, especially when a person is doing something wrong. They usually emphasize one or two things. The first thing, they either perpetuate fear.
Yes.
If they do not perpetuate fear, they try to bribe you. Which they scare you so that you don't tell. They give you something so that you don't tell.
Yeah.
And in this context, if a child sees that this is now a little bit not know the no, because it's okay for you to tell your daughter that you're beautiful, but you don't have to pay your daughter to tell her that she's beautiful. So if your uncle, if your auntie comes and now starts doing some things that are extra, there is a problem. And one thing that I always emphasize upon is parents should be in a space where they talk to their children about this. Make them understand that it is something as simple as that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because if you're a human, there are always things that make you feel uncomfortable. And the moment you start feeling uncomfortable, it's a problem. Even if it's a compliment.
Even if it's a compliment, you will feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And as a young person, the moment you start just feeling comfortable, it must ring alarm bells. That's the message that we are getting there, that even though it comes as a compliment where someone usually is saying, you're beautiful, you're this, and usually it's someone from the opposite sex.
Exactly.
Exactly. Someone from the opposite sex for young people, just be aware that it could actually be leading to sexual exploitation and abuse. We'll continue with our discussion after the break. Our discussion on sexual exploitation and abuse continues. Trevor, there is often this argument that is raised when people speak of a clash that exists between rights and responsibilities for children. And would we then say the focus on rights of children create an environment where children would then forgo their responsibilities?
You know, this is a very complicated question,
Yes.
and this is directed to the parents. I need you to understand, parents, that when we talk about rights, kana kuti pachishona kodzero dzevana, we are not foregoing what a child needs to do. If you look at the whole context of comprehensive sexuality education, it focuses specifically on a child knowing everything. Because the thing is that when we talk about comprehensive sexuality education, most people then think, oh no, you want to teach our children about sex.
Yes.
The thing is that they need to know. Because when you know, that's when you can choose that I want to do this, I want to do this. Because if you do not have that knowledge of understanding that sex can be this, if a person comes to you and invades your personal space in a sexual way,
Yes.
and you do not understand it, it's a problem. But at the end of the day, if we talk about rights, there's a key element. If you look in the context of international human rights, regional human rights, local human rights, the responsibilities are always there. Because in knowledge comes power.
Yes.
And in power comes you being able, the capacity of you being able to stand up for yourself. That's when you know that if a person is coming too close for comfort, of just standing right here and breathing on your neck, it's like, this is wrong. That's when you can stand up for there. That's when child is able to come back to you as a parent and be like, you know, Uncle Ningi Ningi is doing this to me. And I need for everyone to then understand that it is not, the Bible clearly says, and this is the very same context that we want to emphasize when we are giving children information about comprehensive sexuality education.
Okay. And would we then say we can get to a situation where sometimes we can have children actually who are then misunderstanding those rights and then in a way forgo the responsibilities to an extent where parents would then say, avachabatsirika, avachateereri.
That's a very true statement. Because at the end of the day, let's go back to where the children are learning this information. I remember the first place where I learned about sex. I came back home, my mom wasn't there, opened up the TV, looked, it was interesting. And I enjoyed that for a while. And it took me about 5 years after for the first person to tell me that what you were seeing there were people having sex. And if I did not comprehend this properly, I would have gone in a different way, and my life would not may not be at this point where I am. And unfortunately, most children do not have the privilege that I've had as an individual. And in that context, which is why I always go back to who then gives the power of information. Children are raised by parents, children are raised by guardians, children are raised by caregivers. If these people do not give people right information, they will get it from somewhere else, and where they get it from defines the person that they're going to be.
And is there ever any instance where we would then say a child is consented to sex?
Yes. Can I pause a little bit before I answer? Because this is a very contentious question. And there's been so much debate going on all over. This child then solicited a sex worker. This child
Yes.
then went to this man in a bar, like, I want you. But one thing that we need to understand is that a child is a child. The reason why we define this person as a child and this person as an adult, it goes back to the issue of comprehension. One thing that most people need to appreciate is that when it comes to sex, there is cause and effect. You do what you do, and then the effect comes after. So as a child might want that. This is the carnal, but the effects that then come after that are not comprehensible to the child. So in that context alone, this is why I'm so in support with the current law context that says that a child, as long as you're under the age of 16, you do not consent, because the comprehension of the complexities of the things that happen after sex, whether it be pregnancy, HIV infection, or STI infection, or even just the beautiful complexities of the emotional part of sex. Those are the things that children cannot comprehend. So in that answer, I will stand with the law of Zimbabwe. For as long as you are under the age of 16, you cannot consent to sex.
So take, for example, you're in a court and the child is actually speaking as a witness and saying, no, we actually agreed. Does that lessen the sentence, or does that lessen the crime committed? When the child vehemently states, because I've read somewhere where a child would be saying, no, but we're in love.
No, that's very true. And in that context, the law, in terms of how it deals with this, has different forms of assault that take place. It takes place rape, aggravated indecent sexual assault, that's section 66 and section 67 of the Codification Reform Act. And then if you go down, it then talks about issues of indecent assault and also issues of sexual intercourse with the minor, which is still against the law and goes in the context of what you just said.
I do know our time is actually running out, but for young people who might actually be going through these issues and would want to get in touch, how can they get in touch with you?
The most important thing is for you to report. If anything happens to you, at ARC, we always say, Pazaitikira Taura. You can contact us at ARC. We are found at Parirenyatwa, Ward C9. You can come there anytime. Our services are free of services. If you are in Kadoma, you come to our clinic in Kadoma. If you are in Masvingo, you come to our clinic in Masvingo. If you are in Gokwe, you come to our clinic in Masvingo. You can even call us on our toll-free number, 080-80-472. You can call this number. It's a free number. You can call it anytime, and it's open 24 hours because you need to be helped.
Indeed, as a young person, whenever you're faced with exploitation, sexual exploitation and abuse, you need to be assisted. You need to be protected. We've heard those contact details, and alternatively as well, you can go to the nearest police station. You will be assisted, particularly if you go to the victim-friendly unit. Thank you so much to Adult Rep Clinic for coming and unpacking this issue for us. What we would want is to see a vibrant young people who develop into a bright future. Until next week, it's goodbye.